I'm going to be talking to Darren Gresch, who's the Senior Research Associate at the Conference Board of Canada, about a new study entitled Green Occupation Pathways from Vulnerable Jobs to Rapid Growth Careers. So welcome to the interview, Darren.
Thank you for having me.
Look, I've been doing, over the last 2.5 to 3 years, I've done a lot of interviews with experts who point to mature industries like the oil and gas industry, where technology like digitalization and automation are replacing workers and driving up labor productivity. And is this the group of industries, the group of workers that you're addressing in your study?
I think there's certainly a component of that. If we take a step back, this research is part of a 2 or 3 years now where we've been looking at workers who are at high risk of automation, but also have low degrees of labor mobility. So that means they're going to need to undergo some sort of significant amount of retraining in order to be able to adapt to changing jobs. When we're talking about, potentially people being affected by automation or digitalization, we're trying to emphasize the transformative aspect of that. So while, certainly some jobs will be automated, there's plenty more that will, just see significant changes in terms of what's expected of their roles. And even being able to adapt to those changes, there's definitely going to need to be a degree of upskilling and support by governments and employers to make that happen. So when it comes to oil and gas, if you look at the report, we don't necessarily speak specifically to oil and gas workers, but if you look at the regional breakdown, in Alberta, for example, there's definitely larger costs associated with those potential transitions, just because we look at not only the costs of retraining for having actually say formal education or on-the-job training, we're also looking at the opportunity costs of what it would take to make those transitions. And because typically oil and gas workers have those larger salaries, bringing in more income, those costs, because of that, having to potentially take a year off to retrain has a greater impact for those workers.
Now, I understand that 20% of Canadian jobs are at risk of automation. Any particular trends that we should focus on here?
Yeah, I mean, certainly, aside from this research, we've also been looking over the past year or so about, how businesses are adopting technologies, how the pandemic has spurred things along. Even before the pandemic, if you looked at, all the different self-checkout kiosks and ordering machines, things like that popping up, virtual assistants. If you go on a website, you'll get a, "Hey, how are you?" And, that's often an AI chat assistant. So what we had found is that it seems like organizations have accelerated their technology adoption over the past year. And I think that's pretty evident through the widespread adoption of video conferencing like Zoom and Microsoft Teams. So there's definitely, it seems like, and if you add in the whole layer of, health and safety and minimizing human contact, et cetera, there's definitely a business continuity angle as well in terms of being able to future-proof a business in terms of, making sure that there are other options on the table, or that you can continue to provide the services and goods that you need to provide, while also, ensuring that you're able to adapt and become more innovative and actually compete at a global level too, right? Because while there's these, bringing it back to, oil and gas companies wanting to, or, the industry maturing, there's certainly a competitive angle to it as well.
Now, your report notes that as technology adoption increases, skill gaps will be growing. Is this the kind of a situation where or let me rephrase that. Are jobs becoming ever more technical and therefore more fragmented? That means more specialized, maybe is the better way to put it. And does that then lead to the jobs gaps?
Um, well, one thing that we have found over the past couple of years is really the importance that while machines and automation and technology are certainly getting better and better at doing a wide variety of tasks, there's still the human, the social, emotional skills that are core to what we as people can deliver. And while the barriers to being able to, the constraints are loosening for machines to be able to do more things. Those core social emotional skills are really what are going to be what employees and employers are going to have to focus on in terms of, ensuring that they're able to continue to contribute to the economy in a meaningful way. So yes, while jobs are getting more technical in a lot of sense, there's also more and more we're realizing that, well, there's all these other different types of activities and jobs that require, effective communication skills, being able to really tap into those human skills.
So if I understand this correctly, while at the same time the technical requirements for these jobs are growing, so are the soft skills that are required.
Correct.
Great. Now, how are barriers such as compensation and job security, how are they coming in the way of workers transitioning?
Yeah, so that's an interesting thing. So when we had originally looked at the research, we were taking a pretty systemic look at different data points. But we also put out a survey to about 550 Canadians across Canada, just to get an idea of what are some of these other human factors that people might consider when it comes to transitioning between jobs. So we looked at, job security. Would they feel secure moving into a different industry? Do they think that they're going to be fairly compensated? Do they have familial commitments that might be keeping them in place? Like a sick family member, or you have a house and it's you have to deal with having to relocate. There's also worries about whether or not employers are going to be able to provide the resources that are necessary for employees to be able to adapt to a new role. And then there's also there was a few other considerations that we looked at. So we didn't have any real definitive answers on that. There's definitely quite a few to keep in mind. But on the whole, people are generally pretty open to transitioning to new jobs. So.
Well, let's talk about that, because a big growth sector, of course, is the clean economy, the green economy, the clean energy economy, however you want to describe it. To what extent are the workers who are going to be displaced by automation and other new technologies, to what extent are they going to be able to find good paying jobs in this new part of the economy?
Yeah, so as part of the research, we were looking at, rather than boil the ocean and see all of the different areas that individuals can transition into, we wanted to provide a bit of a lens, a bit of a thematic lens, and that helps with policymakers as well, right? Because it helps develop policy around, potentially not only helping vulnerable workers, but also growing other parts of the economy. And we have models at the conference board where we're able to project occupation in different, or project employment in different occupations in different industries out to 2040. And so we had looked at the clean economy as a start, but we're also exploring the sustainable blue economy. We're also exploring the digital economy. There's the care economy, if you will. So there's our criteria for looking at these job transitions is that the destination occupations, the jobs that people are potentially transitioning into, are growing at a faster rate than jobs throughout the rest of the economy. So we know that they are in demand.
So it sounds like that is actually good news for workers. It looks like there'll be more jobs opening up as their other jobs become redundant or they decide to move on.
For sure. Yeah. And again, to that point about, redundancy or jobs closing, it might also just be that there's significant transformation in store for them. So
Final question, Darren. I'm curious about the opportunities for youth. So if I was 18 to 30 and looking at the next 10 or 20 years, should I be optimistic or pessimistic?
Well, I don't think it never hurts to be optimistic, right? But one thing that we did notice with these high risk, low mobility jobs is that youth tend to be overrepresented in them. So, there is that component of it as well. I think what's important to keep in mind is that, we've identified the, a fairly substantial set of occupations that are at risk, which includes, quite a few young people. And right now we're just trying to find, give them options and give them information about understanding what options are available to them. And I think knowledge is power, and helping them understand what's available to them is really the I think going to go a long way in terms of not only helping them individually, but also helping our economy become more competitive.
As a general rule of thumb, is it fair to say, Darren, that as jobs become more technical, that a tech savvy generation like the millennials, the 18 to 30-year-olds, actually they're well positioned to take advantage of those emerging jobs?
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that statement. Certainly, someone who's grown up with technology, potentially in their hands when they're just toddlers, right? Like they're going to be that much more equipped to deal with all sorts of digital technologies. It's hard to say. We haven't looked at that specific aspect of it in the research, but intuitively, I think that makes sense what you're saying.
Well, Darren, thank you very much for your insights. Really appreciate this.
Yeah, thank you for having me on.